Welcome to Greetings from the Future, Tales from the Metaverse, another one of our shows on exploring the metaverse and technology related to the metaverse. Today, we're going to be talking about Chat GPT, which seems to be all the rage right now. So we'll go ahead and start, and I'll let Chris take it from there.
Well, thanks for that, John. Yes, I will take it from there. Well, I mean, no, seriously. I mean, ChatGPT is such a, maybe you could call it sometimes a buzzword at the moment, because how many people do really know what that thing is? Basically, to describe it, I mean, it's a website. You just open a page, you have to log in, and then you can ask a question or try to communicate with, what is it? An artificial intelligence? Is it something like a chatbot? Where is this data coming from? So many people have so many questions about that. And I just can say I tried it in several weeks, quite a lot of times. It is mind-blowing if you just ask questions, if you start a conversation, and that thing answers. It gives you answers. If you have questions about technology, if you have questions about how to do things or whatever, and it sounds like a human being. So it is mind-blowing for sure.
So you mean it's not a human being? There's not millions of people sitting there watching out for questions and then typing these answers?
Well, I mean, think about it. Maybe there are a lot of people somewhere in China, and they're typing in. They have to be good in languages, because you can write in German, in English, in never tried other languages. Try Italian or Swahili or whatever. I don't know if you get an answer, but anyways, it's a collection of data. We will talk about that in detail, but you sometimes have this impression there are some people sitting behind that, because it feels human. What is your impression?
Exactly. And, I think that has to do, well, we should go to the next slide here. Actually, 2 slides. Has to do with how these models, and in this case, a language model, is trained. And, GPT has been trained on texts that haven't been published and other written data, which in itself introduces issues like biases, because what it's doing is reading this stuff, processing this stuff, applying parameters to it to better able to understand this stuff. It doesn't know about things like racism or sexism or that type of thing. And so it's basically going on what it's learned. And, it's totally amazing in terms of the amount of information that these AIs are now capable of reaching out to. I mean, one of the latest things, and I think, you can't open a newspaper these days or a magazine without finding something about, AI or, Chat GPT or Mid Journey or something like that. But the latest thing with Chat GPT is that it's now challenged the MBA exam, and I think at Wharton, I believe, and I have heard a rumor that it was able to pass a medical exam as well. And so now we have, Chat GPT MD. But, I'm just going to add something, and we'll go to Eric for comments here. These AIs are not infallible, and so I'm serious about the fact that it's passed these exams. But I would not suggest looking at an AI for information that may jeopardize your health. So if you're feeling sick or something is happening to you, don't rely on the AI. Go to a doctor or another health professional. So, Eric, comments?
Well, I appreciate you throwing out that medical advice to not consult them for that, because we don't want to be held accountable for that. So I first got to thank you for that, John. Uh, I think one of the biggest things that I'm seeing right now is we started putting the show together a few weeks ago. And what has happened since the idea of, we need to do a show on this to there, it shows how fast word is spreading in this age of a great piece of technology comes out. And when you guys were talking about this, to me, it was like, this is like Alexa or Siri, but just on another level. Like when you look at the conversations you have with them compared to the complexity of these conversations, it's really, let's say you're thinking about an idea. Like with a chat bot, it was like, okay, it'll kind of guide you through some telephone systems to get you to the right place. But sometimes I feel like it's like, hey, you have another opinion out there. Like, hey, I'm thinking of naming this thing, and here's what I think all about it. And it's almost like you're having a discussion with somebody to do a brainstorming session, and it's an intelligent person to have a brainstorming session with. So for me, this is a phenomenal piece of technology. It's like, granted, your friend could have some names and stuff like that, but it's like you said, unbiased. It's just like, and if you don't like those names, you know what, you ask it for more names, and then it just will it'll continue to give you more information in the conversation. And it seems like it doesn't have a choice to not engage with you in the conversation. So it's like, unlike a friend or something like that, they've like, no, I've given you enough names. Let's talk about something else. Like, no, if you want to stay on this subject, ChatGPT will be there for you, and it'll have more names for you. So you can just kind of go down the rabbit hole. It's pretty magical.
I mean, just when we are at this point already, what you said, John, about the exam, for example, that was passed, isn't there also maybe a different point of view? And that different point of view came to me in the last days. Like, as I said, it feels like very human, the conversation. And you really think sometimes it's quite human. Could it be that our type of conversation, as we talk together as human beings, is somehow a little bit very much, let's say, not restricted, but in a very, very narrow corner already? Always using the same terms. We are using the same topics, and we talk about them, and we have a certain way to communicate. And I think this way that we mechanize ourselves, right, instead of always being free in our thoughts and discussing, right, we have so much small talk, we have so much things that are always the same, right? Maybe that is the point, that ChatGPT it is so easy for that AI to mimic, to be a human being.
Right, but that, I mean, I think that brings me to one of my arguments here, and we'll get to this a bit later again. But what is the difference between a human being and an AI? And some people will say soul or spirit or whatever, but to me, it's education and the ability to think critically. And I don't. I apologize for putting human beings down, but I think there's a lot of human beings that we give more credit to for being smarter than they perhaps should be. And so I think we really need to look at what it means to be a human being again, and perhaps take a different stance to all of this and say, we have these AI tools that can mimic human conversation and certain other things that humans do, which enables humans now to do more productive things. And so, I mean, that's a whole interesting conversation. But let's move on to the next slide. Benefits. So here we have, and we could make endless lists of this. I think some of the benefits that we've seen from these AIs, and I would say cheating at exams is not one of them. But one of the things that I've used it for, and other people have used it for, is outlining. In fact, this PowerPoint presentation that you're seeing today, basically what we said was, create an outline for a presentation, and it created the outline, and then we filled out the rest of the outline. Had I done that myself, I would have had to think and sit and, how is this going to flow? What's going to go in here? And so it saved me a lot of time to be more creative. And there's just so many benefits to it. Unfortunately, as you'll see later, some of the benefits are a little bit nefarious, or a lot nefarious. And, it's like everything. People can use technology for good and bad.
Absolutely, definitely. Did you hear about the first movie that was written by ChatGPT, Safe Zone? I just saw it half an hour ago. It's a 6-minute and 38-second long movie written by ChatGPT and directed by ChatGPT. So ChatGPT wrote, they had something like, we're asking ChatGPT to write 10 or 20 different basic storylines, and they choose one of them. And then ChatGPT elaborated on that one. And it also wrote shot lists, like how does the scenery looks? Where should the camera stay? How should the camera move? And so on and so on. So that's what is written in in the titles. It's directed and created by AI.
Wow, and that's pretty amazing. In that, and I think that takes us to how to use Chat GPT and these AIs. In that, if you put in a simple command like write me a script for a movie, it's going to kick out maybe a couple of hundred words at the most. But what one does then is takes those 100 words and add to it. Many of these programs also allow you to type continue into the prompt box, and the program will then continue from where left off. And so, that's something to remember. The one thing, though, that, I need to mention here is that, ChatGPT has become all the rage all of a sudden. But, GPT has been around now for, I think, 5 years. It's been evolving. And, there have been products out there. For example, I've been using, it started off as Jarvis, then it became Jasper, to do all kinds of things, from writing articles to writing Google ads to rewriting text. And as I say, that's been out there for 2 years, and it's pretty remarkable. And, now all of a sudden we've woken up, and, companies like Google are freaking out, and, we're going to be seeing AIs from Google shortly, because they have realized that they've been left behind.
I can only imagine how much, like, the school system, one of the employees that I have, his mom is a teacher, and she wrote like this thesis paper, and he basically sat down and was like, what was it about? And he gave the outline and everything like that, and he said you could just see the look on her face, to where it was like, oh my goodness. So I really think that this is going to transform the way education is going to be done, and as far as the writing of papers. And I think it's going to have us reverse engineer a little bit more of like how we're training kids, instead of having them read the book, and they're going to be doing that paper in school and write this thing, or watching something, or like how we talk in VR, like going into an immersed world and actually experiencing history instead of reading it and needing to write a paper like this. So I think that there's going to be some definite ways that of implementing other things, because to just write a paper like this, it's not going to make sense. It's going to definitely change the way things are going to be done, which I think is going to be for the better. Could definitely be. Yeah.
I mean, but it comes down to cheating again, and I mean, education, in my opinion, anyway, is being involved in the education. And so, if you get an assignment to read a particular text, and
Yeah.
what you do is you ask ChatGPT for a summary of that text and don't read the text, I think you're just doing yourself a disfavor. And so I mean, definitely education has to be able to figure out how to deal with this, because we first started to have issues when the internet came along and people could just copy and paste stuff into a paper. And so plagiarism engines became very popular. But if you look at AI technology and how it works, and we could have a whole session on this in itself, would argue that in fact it is original work. It's not taking blocks of text from somewhere else and then just rearranging them to look good. What it's doing is looking at each letter and each sequence of the word and putting in another word based on its experience and training. And so, and many of you probably know that right now, a couple of companies, artists have sued Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, which, in my opinion, is good, because I think it's going to bring out the technology. And people, with image generation, people are still thinking that it's photo bashing, that these programs just take lots of images and rearrange them to something that looks good. And they have no understanding of the diffusion technology that actually runs these applications. So,
yeah, you will have to understand, if you somehow get in touch with those technologies, what basically the background is. What does it mean? What kind of data is taken here? Is it always a whole sentence that a model takes? Probably not. It's more the way how language is working. It will be diffused. It will be set it into very, very little chunks, and the AI will understand how things are getting to work together, and then it's starting to mimic. In the end, that's the way it goes. But can we just talk again a little bit about education? You're right. If you have an assignment and you are just pushing that on the AI, that is not the best idea. But you can use the AI if you don't understand something to get an explanation. Right? If you have something about ancient Rome and you have a text and you can learn it and you can whatever convert it, I don't know. But still, you don't have this idea what this guy Julius Caesar was. Can ask ChatGPT. You could also Google, but in this case, you have more precise questions and you get a quite precise answer, right? It's really going into a precise answer. And that is the utilization that I like and feels that human. That is incredible with it. And as we have a lot of guests here. That's great today. And I hope we will have some questions later on as well. And we did, in the last week, if you're interested, we did some experiments and we did some YouTube shorts on that. We tested ChatGPT, for example, how to utilize it as a world builder, for example, in Altspace or VR Chat or where else. Can this language model help us on creating 3D worlds? And what we tested was, for example, hey, ChatGPT, can you create web VR theme for us? Because that is made out of code, for example, in Babylon.js. And it did it. It created a complete Babylon.js scene. You could copy and paste it and use it. Or, for example, you need a color table of, let's say, a tree bark for a virtual tree that you're just modeling. And you want to know how would this tree probably looks in reality. And ChatGPT also generated a table of colors, a color spectrum that you can use in RGB values. You can directly use it. So there are a lot of utilizations, a lot of possibility that this tool can give you.
It even had us did a theme song for us as well for the virtual film company, and it's pretty good.
Right, which we're now all going to sing. No, but on that
Beautiful.
comment, one of the things that we asked it was to write a promotional piece for us for the virtual film company. And again, I mean, something like this would have taken, you know, time in terms of thought, the direction that it's going to go, etc. And this took me a minute. There's often slight errors. One of the things that this was quite funny. In fact, it mentioned that we're doing this documentary and that it's going to be showing at local theaters and be sure to get a ticket. So it fabricated that part. Hopefully at some point we will have a film in a theater, but right now we don't. So let's go to the next slide, which is interesting. As this happened 2 days ago. A company in San Francisco um, basically offered a reward, and it happened on the 22nd, I believe. I haven't heard anything since. That the defendant was able to go into court with an earpiece and then get feedback from GPT Esquire, basically, on what to say to the court. So, we're going to see more and more of this type of app. I'm actually surprised that the courts allow it, but oh well.
Yeah, that's for sure interesting, and it will change. Imagine go into negotiations with a different company. You have something on your ear or on your smartphone, whatever. It gives you tons of information in a short amount of time about another company, for example. When you think about, hey, we could buy stocks from this or that, and you get not just some numbers, but you get something like a full, I don't know, information package, right? And on top, maybe in the future, those systems could also tell you, well, your the person that you're negotiating with knows something about him. This person is coming from Japan. He's doing this and that. And now they could give you advice like, say this thing this and that way, because he probably would like it. That's a complete different thing from just getting some numbers. They could give you somehow a complete text on your ear that you just speak.
You can download an app on your, I believe, both iPhone and Android, which gives you the ability to communicate with famous people. I mean, basically, it looked like hundreds of famous people. And I tried it out. It's all text based, which is unfortunate. When I downloaded the app, I had this expectation of being able to actually talk to these people, but maybe I'm too far ahead of myself. But it was interesting. But nothing that GPT can't do itself. And that's, I guess, another word of warning here is that with GPT and Midjourney and all of these systems just appearing all of a sudden, it seems there are a lot of unscrupulous people out there. And one of the things that people have done is create apps that pretend to be Midjourney or pretend to be GPT and are actually not. And you end up paying for something that you don't have to pay for to begin with. And there are other security issues. So be careful with that.
Yeah, it's always a good advice. Those models at the moment, most of the time, are free. And it's like some websites that try to sell Blender to you. You're talking about Blender. It's a fraud.
Yeah, so Chris was talking about some useful stuff that we've done, and I will add. Brought up some comments about legal stuff where I've used GPT to write contracts, to write agreements, to actually check contracts. And again, I mean, don't just take it from the screen and push it into an email. Read it. Does this make sense? Has GPT elaborated or expanded on something that is not the truth? Be careful with it. But coding is something that we found that GPT is just amazingly helpful with. in terms of, simple tasks. Basically here, I asked it to create a number of spheres and then animate the spheres, and it wrote the code, and I had to tweak the code a little bit. But, again, I mean, it's time saving to be able to, here's a chunk of code, and I need to make these small changes. May have taken me an hour before, it took me 10 minutes with this. So next slide.
And I think so part of the biggest thing is somebody who has a job that does this stuff right now, they go, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. And I've said to people, I was like, well, you should utilize this to leverage so now you can work more efficiently, because there's so much work that still needs to get done that you would have, oh, this took me so long before. Now it's just not going to take you so long, so you can be more efficient. So it's like, I don't know why people want to, there's positivities to this as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue in that people run scared of technology. I mean, you can go back and you can look at when the car was invented. People were all freaked out about that. The printing press. I mean, I don't think anyone here can provide me an example of technology where people haven't been freaked out and, oh, it's going to replace me. I'm going to lose my job. And the reality of it is that people are going to lose their jobs. But the reality of it is in this world, unless you continue to educate yourself, you continue to look forward and not expect to have, one career for the rest of your life or work for one company for the rest of your life, you'll be fine. I mean, this technology is going to help you move forward. And so, learning about it, learning how to use it, and particularly that the nuances of it. So anyone can put in a question. Not everyone can craft a good question, which really makes a difference.
Well, that's for sure. And we should also ask for questions from our audience here. If there are some questions about that topic, if you have something that you want to tell us, experience with ChatGPT, how do you utilize it? In today, for example, in the terms of filmmaking, I was just trying to ask ChatGPT, for example, dubbing and spotting. That is a big thing. You have a text and that should be dubbed in a different language. So now give ChatGPT a text and ask if a normal human being would read it. How much time would he take or she take for it? And ChatGPT directly gave me some numbers. This would take 17 seconds. Well, I tried it myself. And the piece of text that ChatGPT told me would probably take 17 seconds, took me 38.
Yeah, so, on the topic of questions, does anyone have a question before we continue on? Just raise your hand. Looks like better than unicorns. So give me a second, better than unicorns, and we'll get you up here. You can come and sit on the...
So as he's doing that, what would you guys say an example of the ethical concerns around AI and privacy?
I think John already said that about how these AIs are going to be trained with data. And now it depends a lot what kind of data you're taking from what kind of person and what place of the world it's coming from what time frame. And so if you would take a lot of data, let's say that would be classical texts, books, whatever, you could find a lot of racism in there and how people just thought and wrote hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, right? That makes sense. Yep.
It depends a lot on the data that you have. So it is really, really, really...
Thanks for the panel. It was really good conversation. Appreciate hearing all of this. The question that I've got is around copyright and at what point... So let me give a little bit of context. I'm writing a lot of articles for my company, and sometimes there's a step-by-step process that I just want some help from GPT-3 to help me figure out how do I structure this thinking So where is the line that's Chat GPTs or GPT 3s or Open AIs? And when does it become fine? Like where's that threshold? I know that's like an open debate, but where do you three stand on it?
Yeah, I mean that's a
Um,
great question because I
yeah.
mean it's similar to looking at a student's paper for plagiarism, right? And so if you run it through a plagiarism engine like Turnitin, you'll see where there's a similarity between other works. But as a professor, when I look at the results, I have to look at them with an open mind in that certain words are more common than others, and so they will show up. But what I'm really looking for is a paper that may have made a few mistakes in terms of quotes and used other materials, but what I want is to see that the student or the person that's written the paper has develop their own ideas. And so, with GPT, and this is where, it's going to unfold over the next couple of months, I'm sure. But, I don't see anything wrong with writing a outline. As I've said, we've done that many times. I don't see anything wrong with, asking GPT to, help with the creative process. I do, however, see a problem with having GPT write everything and claiming that it was written by a person. And so I think one of the other places this is going is that possibly at some point one is going to have to say, this was written by John Harvey. And in fact, I mean, we're starting to see that in some scientific journals already, where when you publish an article in a scientific journal, you have your names listed, and we're starting to see, John Harvey, GPT Chat as a name. But again, I mean, my advice would be, to minimize what you're using right now, because there's people that are working on, AI plagiarism engines where they can, run stuff through it and it will show what supposedly the AI wrote. And, I'd hate to be an example of, someone trying to bash AI. I mean, we're in the early days now. And so,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, just
for
be
me,
careful. It's there's people out there, unfortunately, that, if it's written by AI, they don't give a damn. I mean, to me, if it sounds good, if it's written well, if it provides information, I don't give a damn who wrote it. AI, an alien, a human, whatever. But there is a lot of garbage out there, though. You can look through some of the news services and pick out stuff that was either written by a non-English speaker or an AI. And, I think that just, I mean, CNET, for example, or is it no, C-SPAN, I think it was, admitted that for the last couple of months, their articles have been written by AI. And recently, and they defended that position, but recently they pulled back because they said that they found that there were too many errors in the articles. And this goes back to in the days of the early internet where we decided, we don't need customer support anymore. And so, people can just email us and things, fall apart. And it's the same thing with AI. You can't just say, write me an article about XYZ and slap it up on a website without reading it because you don't know what. I mean, sometimes, I mean, to me, one of the pleasures of working with AI is that occasionally it will just go off, totally. I mean, what comes out of it has got nothing to do with what you asked, or anything. And it's just like, wow. So,
Chris, it seemed like you had something to add.
Yeah, because I mean, sure, just let AI do anything and you just put it up for sure. I think for everyone that should be clear that is not a good idea. For your case, I think it's a bit more special because you said you just are searching for, I don't know if those are different ideas or different directions or additional information. And, I think when you write a text, and now it depends a lot on what kind of text you're writing. Is it more a creative text? Is it a news text? Is it information or whatever, or a mixture of that, a blog? If you stick to your style, because you probably have your own way of presenting information, of speaking to your readers or whatever, right? That is the point. As I said in the beginning, sometimes I've got this feeling that we have ourselves already so much into small talk and let's say always repeating structures when we communicate, that that is probably not a good idea to use when you address an audience. And I think the most important thing is to keep your style and to maybe to evolve it, to find ChatGPT in between and say, hey, give me a synonym for this. Maybe can I say this in a different way, but still stick to your idea that this is getting to be clear.
Yeah, sometimes it really is about, I've written a paragraph or I've written several sentences and I'm going, God, this needs to be restructured. I don't know what to do to restructure it. And I mess around with it a little bit, but then throw it into GPT-3 or GPT-3 and it gives me 3 or 4 different options. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can take this component here and plug it in. And that is my voice. It's just more clear. So,
and that is the exact way I would interpret, to use it to just, it's almost like having somebody else look at what you wrote and being like, well, here's some suggestions for you. And then you pick it apart, like even coming up with names. It's like, well, I like this name and then this one, and you're hybriding them together. Like you didn't even use the name that they came up with, but you used some of the ideas that it pulled from the air, which a lot of the times I feel like people have been referencing Google. Like you'd ask Google, hey, what do you think about this? Google gives you the synonyms or whatnot, and then you got to look through that, and it just wasn't clear enough, and I know some people love Wikipedia to reference their stuff because that's such a great source of information also. But that's based on opinion, a lot of that.
Wikipedia is, so it's got validation from a larger population. Makes sense. Well, thanks again for answering the question. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Unicorn.
Pleasure.
Does anybody else have a question they want to talk about, experience that they are having with GPT, or we can continue on?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be no shortage of articles over the next few months about how people are losing their jobs and how it's being misused and how it's so terrible and how the government should ban it, and it's going to go on and on and on.
For me here in this talk show especially, there's always a big question, and that also goes down to our audience here. We are all in this infancy of the metaverse, and the big question was, does something like ChatGPT really helps in the metaverse? We discussed about that in our meetings several times. And you just wrote down what is the most probably used tool or a language like ChatGPT in the metaverse. And for sure, the first thing that we came up was assistance. Think about, you have a 3D world. You generated a 3D world, and that world needs explanation. Might be a world like Lida, quite well known here on Altspace, did, recreating the whole Greek temple situation in Athens, for example. And she always asked for, I would love to have something like a bot here that can communicate, more or less human-like. And if a visitor comes in and I don't have the time to be here all the time, it can answer questions like, hey, what kind of building do we see here? And what did it do? And why was it built? And can you bring me to this spot or whatever? And I just saw that there is a basic implementation now in Engage, that virtual platform. They implemented a bot with ChatGPT connection. I just saw that today. So I think this would be a very, very valid use case for space, well, until much
Yeah.
fun ever.
I mean, it's coming because, like, as you add up, I mean, how many times you go to a museum, you can walk through a museum, you can look at the artwork, and it's got the little explanations, or you can pay the extra money, and then they give you the headset that's the guided tour. But again, the guided tour, you can't ask it questions. It's just going to give you whatever, again, piece of information that they want to give you. So now you have a virtual assistant. It has more information. So now you're able to interact and engage and ask questions. And I mean, I feel like that's going to enhance the overall experience, which that's what everybody wants, anyways.
Absolutely. 100%. This assistant technology in this case would be awesome for the metaverse. But on top of that, because we already elaborated a little bit on how can it help to generate 3D worlds, think about having it as a stylistic help in the end. Like you want to, but you don't have enough information. How did a Roman house look from the inside? And ask ChatGPT, give me a description. How was the setting in Pompeii, for example? How did people live there? How can I imagine a person had his daily takedown? What did they do? That might be interesting. And then for you as a world builder, you can take different parts and recreate them. Or if you're jumping ahead of time, let's say 10 years later, why shouldn't ChatGPT or whatever kind of model is out there directly create a 3D world for you? Describe what you want, and the model gets created.
See, and as you guys say this, the thing that it just triggers with me is, is this going to make us smarter or more intelligent or less intelligent? And I feel like it's going to do both. Some people are going to really utilize this to become way more intelligent, and other people are going to just use it, just get by, and they will be, appear to be more intelligent, but actually they're not helping themselves. So I feel like, again, the world is in a state of, we have so many choices with things that are created, whether it's whatever you want to watch, eat, consume. We all need to take responsibility for what we are consuming and what we are interacting with and what we are engaging with, because we have so many options that, it's on us.
I mean, as I said, every day you're going to see articles in the news about AI in general, GPT, the journey, all of those. And, they question all kinds of things. So, we've talked about this, I think, in terms of just how far it should be incorporated into the educational system. And to what you said, Eric, I mean, it reminds me of the calculator, right? Where at one point calculators were banned in schools because people would rely on them too much. But actually, I mean, speaking from my own experience, I did end up relying on a calculator a lot because it was a lot easier to work out formulas on a calculator than it was by hand. So, again, my only concern with all of this is that at some point someone's going to pull the plug. And then, those of us who have relied on technology to the point that some of us do are going to be in trouble. So anyway, next slide. Let's go to the next one.
Well, the metaverse doesn't exist. Yes, speak on it, Chris. Yes. Yes, address
speaking
that.
Of
that's
pulling
good.
The plug, I mean, we all have to think about now that Altspace get pulled the plug, basically, where we will meet again. So we just can invite everyone, check those QR codes here, and they will bring you to the virtual film company, and we will make some announcements where we're going to make shows again. We have a YouTube channel that you can check out with videos, and we're always happy to have some more people working together with us. So the end of Altspace it's just the beginning of our journey into the metaverse altogether. I think that should be definitely for everyone. So stay in touch, and yeah.
But it's great to have you all here, and we will bring it back to the slide. Go, John.
Yeah, earlier I talked about these technologies being used for nefarious purposes, and as a previous security engineer, I decided to see what I could do. I didn't want to go too deep into it and sound off alarm bells, but just basically writing a basic script for Metasploit to do a port scan, and no problems whatsoever. So, next slide, unless there's comments on this.
Right.
So this was a fun one, and we're almost done with our show for today. Unfortunately, as Chris reminded us, it's going to be one of our, we're going to do a few more, but we're quickly running out of time here on Allspace. But, this is one of the fascinating and fun things about these technologies is that, on the screen here, you see that someone has taken an old Selectric, probably an IBM Selectric, and modified it so that they can type in GPT chat prompts and receive the response back on their typewriter. And so, again, this is just something fun that, some people have been working on. And, I think, going back to the comment about using it in the metaverse, there is a company, and I can't remember the name of the company right now off the top of my head, that we've started to experiment with, where you can actually create avatars in Unity and link them to a chat engine. And so the avatar will have some capabilities, at least, to appear to be able to hold a conversation. Having said that, over the years, however, AltspaceVR, people have asked me if I was a bot. And so, unless I sound like a bot, I guess it's not always clear to people, whether there actually is human intelligence behind the thing or the person that they're talking to. But again, I would ask, I think I mentioned this. I mean, one of the problems that has popped up is that a psychological servicing counseling company, service, whatever, use GPT to communicate with their patients. And so some of their patients thought they were actually talking to a real counselor. And the only time people started getting upset, and I guess rightly upset, because this is a scientific experiment they were conducting, and they didn't tell the patients, and so there, some laws were broken there. But again, if I am talking to something or someone and I'm getting benefit from it, I think it's really a waste of time and counterproductive to sit there and think, is this person a human or not? The real question should be, am I getting value from what is being provided? And if the answer is yes, then it really doesn't matter, in my opinion, again.
Well, I think something that's huge here is, because I had a conversation with a writer recently as well, and I'm not going to have any work. I was like, actually, the contrary. You should learn how to leverage this stuff so now you can work much faster, and instead of having to charge these people these huge rates that you're charging them, now because you work more efficiently, you can charge less because it takes a far less amount of time to do. You can use your knowledge to help other people that you could normally not help. And in this counseling standpoint, counseling is expensive that you would need to pay. So this provides people with maybe that don't have the funds to be able to do this, to now have somebody to talk to. So it is an option. So I think a lot of people always tend to want to look at what things don't do instead of the value of what they can do.
Right, but you bring up a really good point about value, and that is that people have attached a value to time. And so, if you ask me to write a 300-word article on XYZ, and it takes me 10 hours to do it, then that's a good article, right? Because I spent a lot of time on it. If I use AI and I write that article in 3 minutes and maybe spend half an hour on reviewing it and making, say, an hour, okay, it's garbage because I didn't spend the time that a quality product would require. And I think we've got that all wrong. That if one can produce something in a shorter time, then you have more time to do other stuff, and that other stuff could be more productive. It's just, again, it's running scared of technology, and unfortunately, the reality of it is that technology is here, it moves, and if we don't move with it, we're going to be stuck. We are going to lose our jobs. We are going to be unhappy, and the rest of it. So. Closing
Use it
comments.
wisely.
We're almost done for the day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really for everyone the best idea. Get involved with it, use it, try to use it wisely, and tell about your experiences and get other people involved. Give them your ideas, right? I think spread the word in this case. It's very important that other people learn from your experiences in the end. That's the best thing that you can do. It's my opinion.
Closing thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for being here. This is we are in the future. A month ago I really hadn't even heard of this GPT chat, and now where we've come in this month, it really is showing us where we are at within this technology and how important it is. I think so many people want to discredit the metaverse, and they just want hope and want it to go away. And we're the people here that want it to be here and see the value of it. So there's I feel like there's just this battle going on in the world, and some people that are just like looking the other way. I don't really feel like they are aware of how fast the world is moving right now, and I don't know, they're going to be left behind because it is just in the last couple of years of being here, what has been created and done is really powerful. And all of you here, the thing I love about the metaverse and technology, we're a group of people that somebody knows how to do something. They're like, yeah, here's how you do it. And they share that information. Let me send you that file. Just like ChatGPT pulling stuff up, people share, and everyone like wants everybody to do better for the most part here, which is different than the regular world. And I think that's what makes us different here is people want to be elevated here. And it's so nice to escape, like, you run into people in the real world and, they almost want to talk down about questioning why you're wanting to do this instead of like being like, oh, that's a great idea. Cool. And it's like, there's just kind of this disconnect. So this is powerful. This is powerful. We're all part of this work that's happening right here. And it is a magic. And I feel like AI is like, it's working through certain people and seeing like, creativity and art. Like you talk about Mid-Journey, these pieces of artwork that are being made. I will look at a piece and I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but I'll look at it and be like, how long, a master artist, how long would it have taken them to make this one image? And I feel like that's what blows artists away is because they're like, this could have taken me a year. It's like how kind of slow art could move in painting and all of this stuff. It doesn't take time. So, but it is amazing the way it can create. And I don't know, it's an exciting time, but that's boom. Thank you, everybody.